Good afternoon and welcome. We're going to go ahead and call this meeting to order. Good afternoon. It is Tuesday, October 12th, 5 p.m. We will go ahead and call our meeting, regularly scheduled board meeting, to order today. So welcome. Good to see you all. Thank you for joining us. For my fellow board colleagues, Dr. Stubblefield, and to all of our staff, Mr. Goheen, great to see you all. And thank you for joining us. For those watching online as well, thank you for being with us. I'm glad to have you here. As a reminder, for those that are in attendance in our boardroom, please make sure your phones are silenced and make sure that your computer sounds are also turned off at this time as well. Thank you. Before we move on, I'll read our board norms and protocols as we do. As a board, we agree to respect the differences of opinions in making decisions for the district, follow best practices in managing the superintendent and the management of the board itself, stay on task when conducting business for the district, including while at board meetings, to never surprise the superintendent or each other when conducting official business of the district, read these norms at the beginning of each board meeting and at board workshops as a reminder of how to conduct our meetings, and to continually self-check to determine if we are following our norms when conducting district business. So with that, Ms. Smith, would you please do a roll call?
Yolanda Clark.
Yolanda Clark, present.
Maxine Drew.
Maxine Drew, present.
Janie Humphries.
Janie Humphries, present.
Randy Lopez.
Randy Lopez, present.
Wanda Brownlee Page.
Wanda Brownlee Page, present.
Dr. Nguyen.
Dr. Nguyen, present.
Dr. Yeager.
Dr. Yeager.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Now entertain a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion. Ms. Smith?
Yolanda Clark.
Yolanda Clark, yes.
Maxine Drew.
Maxine Drew, yes.
Janie Humphries.
Janie Humphries, yes.
Randy Lopez.
Randy Lopez, yes.
Wanda Brownlee Page.
Wanda Brownlee Page, yes.
Dr. Nguyen.
Dr. Nguyen, yes.
Dr. Yeager.
Dr. Yeager, yes.
Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. We will start with our agenda, and first up on our agenda, we have a special award and recognition. We'll invite Ms. Lisa Garcia-Stewart to the podium.
Good evening, President Lopez, Board of Education members, Dr. Stubblefield. It is my pleasure to introduce to you this evening Lorena Shiels from the Metropolitan Baptist Church. I know at the previous board meeting we shared that the Metropolitan Baptist Church every year hosts an event that raises funds for McKinney-Vento families, and our coordinator that leads the work for McKinney-Vento families is also here. And I also just want to acknowledge Brenda Jones. We've been doing this for over a decade, and she is responsible for leading that charge when we started more than a decade ago. So I'm excited. I'll give all of the opportunity for Mrs. Shiels to share the amount and how that's increased, and just to give her an opportunity to speak to the board and present the check.
Yes, good evening to Superintendent Dr. Stubblefield, Board President Randy Lopez, and members of the board, Yolanda Clark, Maxine Drew, Janie Humphries, Wanda Page, Dr. Virginia Nguyen, Dr. Stacy Yeager, and members of the Kansas City, Kansas Public School and guests. My name is Lorena Shiels, and I am a CTE teacher at Arrowhead Middle School.
Yes.
And I'm also the Executive Administrative Assistant to Dr. R.L. Bainham at Metropolitan Baptist Church. I stand before you this evening to present funds raised at the benefit concert on behalf of the McKinney-Vento program on September the 19th at 2 p.m. Dr. Bainham desired to be here this evening to present these checks to you. However, he teaches over at Western Baptist Bible College on Tuesday evenings. Children hold a special place in his heart, and he would do anything to help them to be successful. He understands that children are our future. Brenda Jones, who was a board member for many years and was a board president for this district, saw a special need for students experiencing challenges. That need was aiding those students who needed a little extra due to their circumstances way beyond their control, and also to help them to be successful in their educational endeavors. Metropolitan Baptist Church and Metro Praise has been putting on a benefit concert for each year, and they were sending the funds to other districts outside this community. Brenda Jones, Dr. R.L. Bainham, and T. Gatson got together and decided to help those students right here in this district. Rachel Keith, a member of Metro Praise, a secretary at Douglas Elementary School, and also a member of Metropolitan Baptist Church, was instrumental in being a liaison to the community and helping the McKinney-Vento director make sure all the information was shared with the district and finalization of the disbursement of funds to the district. Prior to the concert in September, Metropolitan Baptist Church voted previously in a business meeting to give 10% of our offerings raised towards the benefit concert. That amount was $4,225. That came from the congregation. The benefit concert raised $4,212. It is my honor, on behalf of Metropolitan Baptist Church, to present to the Kansas Public School Board and the McKinney-Vento program 2 checks totaling $8,437 to be used as you continue to do the work, aiding students and their families. Aiding students and their families in their special needs here in this district. I cannot proclaim enough how much we appreciate your endeavors, your great works. We also thank Dr. Stubblefield, Randy Lopez, Jessica Smith, Lisa Stewart, Janie Humphreys, and all other board members that I might have missed at the benefit concert. Thank you so much.
I'm Jessica Smith, the McKinney-Vento coordinator. I just wanted to publicly thank Metropolitan for all that they've done for our McKinney-Vento students. Since I've worked in the district, they've always had a benefit concert for us. This is the largest sum that we've received. Those of you who were at the benefit concert saw my tears and the happiness that I had for that donation and for what Metropolitan does for our babies. So with all of my heart, I just want to say thank you to Metropolitan and to everyone that supports McKinney-Vento.
Thank you.
That's good.
Wow, what a blessing. Thank you, Ms. Shields, on behalf of the Board of Education for Kansas City, Kansas Public Schools, and for our staff and for our students who will benefit from your and your congregation's generosity. We are so honored and blessed, and please thank the members of your congregation and community for all that they continue to do and have done in the past for our students in McKinney-Vento and just for our district. It's such an honor, and it was truly a beautiful show, and just thank you so much for your generosity. And we're truly blessed to have you in our community doing amazing things. So thank you for being with us tonight as well. And thank you to our Student Services Department, our McKinney-Vento program, for the amazing work that you all continue to do and bless our students with the work and services that you provide. But for you, a lot of our students wouldn't have the resources, the support, and the love that they need to continue to do the work in our district. So thank you for your generosity as well. We'll continue with our agenda. We have no community comment this afternoon, but again, anyone is welcome to enter community comment. Please contact Ms. Leslie Smith if you would like to submit a comment. Next up, we'll hear from our Superintendent of Schools, Dr. Stubblefield.
Good evening, everyone. I also want to say thank you to our Student Services Department and Metropolitan Baptist Church for their support. I just have a few updates and announcements, and I'll share them now. I first want to provide an update on some of our areas where we had a lot of vacancies. Since the prior board meeting, for law enforcement and school safety associates, we have hired 1 LEO in the last month, and we have 2 more officers coming this week, but they will start in January as they have to finish the academy. As for the school safety associates, we have hired 4 since the September 28th board meeting and still have 2 to fill. Again, if you know of individuals who meet the requirements for those positions, please feel free to contact HR, or you can send me contact information as well. In the area of food services, where we also had several openings, since the board meeting on July 26, we have hired 45 individuals for nutritional services positions. And in speaking with Josh, who is the director of the student servicing, we have 29 vacancies currently, and we started with 70 in the summer. We continue to hire these positions, and again, if you know individuals who may be interested, please feel free to contact myself or HR directly. I also want to just provide some information coming forward. We are working with our unified government and other community partners to offer water safety to our students. We're targeting elementary initially, but we are continuing to have plans to introduce it for our middle school and high school students who do not have a background in swimming, in order to provide, so our students can be safe as they continue this summer. Just a reminder, tomorrow I will be hosting a listening and learning sessions for our teachers and staff here at district office. The first session that's tomorrow, Wednesday, October 13th. The first session is from 3:30 to 4:30. And we're primarily asking secondary staff to come to that one. And then the second session is from 4:35 to 5:30, and that's targeted to elementary and early childhood. However, staff can come to either one that best meets their schedule. We also will hold a virtual listening and learning session on Thursday, October 21st, and we'll send more information regarding that. We are working with some specific requests with some specific communities to add at least 1 or 2 more dates, and we'll announce those as we finalize those. This month is National Bullying Prevention Month, and I want to remind everyone that bullying is a concern for both parents and educators, and at our schools, we do teach our students lessons by their counselors as well as their teachers through the Second Step program. Our goal is for all of us to work together to help create a warm and safe and learning environment for all of our students. And there's more information about the training and programs that we share. We'll continue to share that out within the coming days. October is also Dyslexia Awareness Month. Here at KCKPS, we provide programs and services to support our dyslexic community by addressing dyslexia through our multi-tier system of support and through our school student intervention team. Both are school-wide approaches that we use for all of our students. And finally, I just want to announce our attendance winners. This for the month or year. But at elementary, we had 4 winners. Angel, and I apologize for messing up the name, A. Dorato Notori at McKinley Elementary School, DeMarco Painter at Bridges, Josiah Wilson at Hazel Grove Elementary School, Mason A. Johnson at Stony Point Elementary School. And then at middle school, we had Arias E. Avila at Argentine Middle School, Estrella E. Rivera at Central Middle School. And at high school, we had Amina Ingram at Harmon High School and Lisa Chavez Cortez from Wyandotte High School. So congratulations to all of our attendance winners. I talked to her. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Stubblefield. Great things happening. So, yes, Ms. Page.
Yeah, Mr. Lopez, Dr. Stubblefield, in the meeting with UG, you mentioned that the water safety program would be for elementary children. Was there any discussion of possibly training some of our high schoolers to be lifeguards so we won't have the same scenario that we had this past year where you have a swimming pool, you have no lifeguards, and nothing was done to try to, I'm not addressing this to you, but if we could talk to them.
We did
so that we
discuss
can
that.
work on that.
We did discuss that with the larger group and then also with the commissioner. They are working like with our swim teams to do that and to be more proactive around the lifeguard training, but that's some of the things that they're still fleshing out. But last year, they did work and recruit several students, and by the end, when they dwindled down, there was like 1 or 2 students who actually completed it, but they're trying to be more proactive this year to make sure that they can have more students if they can meet the requirements. And the hope, long-term, is as we introduce water safety to continue to develop and build the swimming skills of our students so that we can always have a pool of lifeguards within our community.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Just a few pieces of communication from me. I do just want to say thank you to the Rotary Downtown, KCK Rotary Downtown Club, who invited me to come and speak this past week about the future of Wyandotte County. And so I spoke specifically about the great things happening in our district, especially around the diversity of our district and how we should celebrate and how the diversity within our families and community is such an opportunity and a blessing for us. So just want to thank the Rotary Club for the invitation to come and touch on that and our Diploma Plus program as well. So I was able to highlight some of the good things happening in our district. Reminder, board members, please make sure on your calendar you have October 29th at 1:30 p.m. For a special board meeting. Our board clerk will be making that public soon. We just want to make sure that that's on your calendar for a workshop and to discuss items such as policy and board practices and expectations and more. So you'll be getting an email from me this week with asking for some input from you as well. So be on the lookout for that. Also, you should have received an email from Ms. Smith asking you for your availability for dates in November for another special board meeting and workshop. So if you have not given Ms. Smith your availability for those dates that went forth, please do so as soon as possible so we can get that on the calendar as well. I will say it's looking like November 30th may be a possibility for most, but please make sure you look at your calendars and get your availability to Ms. Smith as well. A shout out and a thank you to Ms. Crystal Watson and the Kansas City, Kansas Foundation for Excellence for your State of the District last week. An amazing job. Thank you to all those that were involved. Dr. Stubblefield had a great message. Mr. Birch, thank you as well for your work in that. And board members, again, the partnership that we have with the foundation continues to be great. So thank you, Crystal, and your team, your board, for the work that you did and for all that were able to watch and participate virtually in that State of the District. It was great, so thank you. I do just want to acknowledge as we end the first quarter, I do want to say thank you to all of our staff for all the work that you've done to get us through this first quarter, for your persistence, your patience, your perseverance, and the love that you show for all of our students. So thank you for the work that you're doing. To our students and families, you've got this. You're doing a great job, and we got you. So we're all in this together. Thank you for all that you're doing. As we finish up strong this first quarter and enter into the second quarter, we look forward to continuing an excellent school year with you. I want to remind folks that this week is National School Lunch Week, so thank you to all of our nutritional services team for all the work that you do to feed the thousands of students that you feed every single day. So thank you for the work you're doing. This week, we also celebrated National Coming Out Day, which is very significant and meaningful for everybody in a different way, so I do just want to lift that up. I know our communications team also lifted that up in our social media, so just want to respect and honor that as well. And as always, if you want to keep up with what's going on in our district, there's a lot of great things happening, so please just continue to watch for communications via social media and or email or text, whichever way is your preferred method. I'm sure we can get you the information. And then lastly, just want to thank some of our partners that we continue to work with in the community, including Sporting KC, who helped with the attendance program that we had, and also hosted several of our students with Mr. Linkus, was able to take some students out there and meet some players, I believe. So that was a great experience for many of our students. Also, we took some students out to the KC Monarchs field as well and stadium. So thank you to all the staff who helped with that as well. And the students, those are experiences that you will remember and that you will learn from and build on. So great things happening in our district. I just want to continue to lift those up. So thank you, Dr. Stubblefield and team, for the work that you all are doing. There, Dr. Nguyen.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have a question, then a comment. Do we have the bullying hotline number on the web page?
I'm looking at one, and I'll try to go there. I know that it used to be there, but I can't speak emphatically about it being there right now. So Edwin is coming to the,
There is a button
On the web,
there.
yeah, on the web page, on the left side of the navigation, there's a bullying and harassment button
Okay.
that's there and that's located
I
on the
think we're
website.
required to do that.
Yes,
So,
it's there.
okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. My communication is I have, excuse me, tomorrow the opportunity to be a part of a roundtable with the State Board of Education about their legislative priorities. And the goal is to have the experience, have the opportunity for them to have a conversation with the House and Senate education leadership. I won't go in with any preconceived ideas, but I don't, it's part of the regular State Board of Education meeting from 10 to 12, so you can tune in and listen. But if they express what they didn't accomplish last year, it should be a less than productive meeting for public education. The State Board is trying to decide their legislative position. And so there is not good blood between the State Board and the House Education Leadership and Senate Education Leadership, Republican leadership. We get along fine, but we can't vote the good policies in. So tune in, 12 to noon, conversation, but of course, in January, we'll know the real intent of policymaking. So that's my surprise for Ms. Clark and Ms. Drew. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Nguyen. Other board commentary? Ms. Page.
Yes, I had an opportunity to visit Bertram Carruthers Elementary School, Quindaro, and Lindbergh, and sat in on a professional development session at Lindbergh, which was good. At Quindaro, got to meet their new principal, very nice young lady. At this time, I apologize, I can't recall her name, but again, it was a good session. Got to meet her and see what she's into. And at Bertram Carruthers, we're trying to help them figure out their parking with the community so we can work that out for the betterment of all. I also attended the listening tour at Washington High School. And again, we just need to get more people out. I also participated in the program at Harmon for vaccination and other activities. I thought that was excellent. I wish we could do more of that to help people out. And myself and Mr. Drew had an opportunity to do a presentation for the Carl Valley Baptist Union, their mission department. They were concerned about how they, as community people, could do better and help us in the educational system with their children, grandchildren, what have you. And we tried to give them some tips on things that we thought, as previous educators, as well as being on the board, what would be beneficial for them. So I had a good last week and a half.
Thank you, Ms. Page. Other board members?
I'd just like to say that I did attend on September 29th, the Kansas KASB advocacy workshop that was in Leavenworth, Kansas, to be able to sit down and talk to various other board members from other districts about things that are concerns that we need to address. And I will be, when we have our retreat, I will be bringing that information to members of the board. I did also attend the listening and learning at Washington High School. And I would just like to, as Ms. Page said, ask parents to please come out and help support so that we can find out the areas that we need to work at and do better as a school district. I had the privilege of going to Emerson Park on October the 2nd, and there was a dunk contest that you could do, that you can be involved in. And our president, Mr. Lopez, was there, and you got 3 opportunities with a ball to throw it, and I missed the first 2, but the third one I dunked him. And so I was very glad to support that event, trying to get people to recognize how important it is to be able to acknowledge us as people culturally, as well as making donations for education at that particular event. And other than that, I just want to encourage our board members to let's continue to stay on the right path to bring about success. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Drew. Let me just say that I've never seen as much joy and emotion when Ms. Drew dunked me in that dunk tank coming from her, so thank you for that. Other board members? Okay, thank you all. Up next on our agenda, we'll invite Ms. Crystal Watson to come up and give us a report from the Foundation of Excellence.
Yes.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Evening.
I have the wonderful pleasure of introducing our Reason to Believe 2021 honorees.
Yes.
Don't y'all get excited at once. So for this year, we have Thomas Alonzo, and board is in your packet, but for the viewing of our community, we also have, he is our 2021, he is F.L. Schlegel, 1975. We have Portia Block, congratulations, Sumner Academy of Arts and Science, 1994 class. Karen Bradley, she's with the class of Sumner Academy, 2005. Susan Bird, F.L. Schlegel, 1979 graduate. James McConnell, Bulldogs, Wyandotte High School, 1966. Darren Nave, he's at Schlegel, class 2004. Stan Parker, Sumner Academy of Arts and Science, 1982. David Peterson, Rosedale High School, 1967. Dayon Richardson, J.C. Harmon, 2007. Carl Rowland, another Schlegel Stallion, 1987. Judith Weber, Argentine, 1965. And Reverend Victor G. Williams, Sumner High School, 1964. Board of Ed, those are your Reason to Believe honorees for 2021.
Yes, congratulations.
So, I just want to remind you all that the Reason to Believe event is scheduled for November 11th. And so you should have that on the calendar. I believe it's at 5 p.m., 5:30 p.m. Ooh, I should know. One of those times, between 5 and 6. So hopefully it will be hybrid, so we'll have the honorees here, but we'll also do it virtually, so we'll have a combination of both. Any questions?
No.
I hope to see you all there, and please don't forget to give to the Foundation for Excellence. Thank you very much, Board President.
Congratulations.
Thank you, Ms. Watson. Thank you. Next up on our agenda, we'll hear a report from Ms. Carol Levers and our Kansas City, Kansas Public Libraries.
Good evening, President Lopez, Board, and Dr. Stubblefield. September was busy for the library, as usual. We started off, actually, we didn't start off, but in September, we had the library in the park. We had 776 people attended. Activities that we had tents for a book sale, 10 for home craft kits. We had live music. We also had library activity tables and a vaccine clinic. There's more pictures on our flickr.com/photos/KCKPL if you need to see more photos. But I will share some of the others with you. These are all the pictures. The book sale was a hit, and people wanted to know when's the next one. I'm like, it took us 2 years to get this one, hold on. But thank you, Dr. Stubblefield. Everybody was so excited to see you, and they still talk about you. So it was fantastic. Also, we were happy to have Ms. Drew there.
Yes.
So thank you for supporting us, appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Those are the tents. We also had an author there, and I have the copy right in front of you. We had extra copies left that I thought we'll give a copy to each of you. We did a survey with all the attendees, and out of 776, we had 120 people in our Readers Advisory table. We had 113 on our mobile table, or mobile tent. We had 192 Schlegel table, and when I said Schlegel, it's Mr. and Mrs. Ethel Schlegel Library, because it's always confusing if you're not sure about the two Schlegels. And then we had 184 at the author event, tent, and those are all the activities that we had. And also, when we asked about the event, just to survey our people, 72% said that they heard about the event on Facebook, and Facebook is really the one that we use most. And you can see we use family and friend was 19.6%, a flyer and newsletter, and our mailer, and all the others. But basically, Twitter's not working anymore for us. We don't get any people telling us that they've heard it on Twitter, but Facebook, and we're glad to use that. So it's just, it helps us. And with the book sale that day, which is just for 4 hours really, we made $2,879.21. We also had our annual Lawson Roberts Butterfly Festival, and we had 300 people attended this Saturday for the actual opening of the festival. And then the following week, we had 6 schools in attendance. We've invited all the elementary schools, Quandero, Stony Point North, T.A. Edison, Noble Prentice, and Lowell Bruni. All their 4th and 5th graders came out, and students rotated through 4 stations, and these stations, one was insect inventory, other one was life cycles of butterflies, and then insects up close, and of course the monarch tagging, monarch migration and challenge game because of releasing the monarch butterflies. And these are all the pictures, what the kids did through that week, and it was really interesting. We had beautiful weather, which really played a big part in that as well. And if, like I said, there's more pictures on our flickr.com. On the very last picture is Jim Schrader. This is the first year that we haven't had Meredith Schrader with us, but Jim and his daughter and his granddaughter came because they still honoring their grandparents who sponsors. His in-law, his mother-in-law was the sponsor for the Butterfly Festival, and she continues to sponsor and support or underwrite the festival. So we're really appreciative of them. We also had winners for the butterfly photo competition, and we asked him to award the winners of the awards. And then end of September, we had the collaboration with or webinar with Croatia. In a Zoom meeting was held on September 27 with the City Library of Ivan Goran Kovacic. We had 65 people in attendance, and 38 were from Croatia. We presented information on our library system because the reason why they reached out to us, they went onto our website and saw what we did during the COVID, and they wanted to learn more because they are now feeling it, and they need to know how we did things here in Kansas City. Because we are sister city, we just kind of connected and became sister libraries with Croatia. And then another meeting will be held. We, in turn, did the teaching this time and the sharing of how we do things. And on November 29th, they will then reciprocate and share with us what they do in Croatia. Next, we will have an exhibit that will open at the main library on October 24th. It chronicles the lives of contemporary migrant farm workers, and it also features photojournalist David Bacon's photographs alongside oral narratives from migrant farm workers. It gives the viewers a reality check on the food they eat and the lives of the people who harvest it. So that will, this exhibit will be through, I think it's December 7th. And we will have some speakers during that time, but I'll keep you posted next month of who the speakers will be. Any questions? Nope.
Right.
Ms. Levers,
Yes, ma'am, sorry.
your staff had a wonderful presentation on that webinar about everything that the library has done for the past 18 months. Some of it I knew about and some I didn't. Could you share that presentation by email with all the board members?
I'll be happy to do that. Yeah. It's a little bit long for me to bring it to the board, otherwise it's a whole 45 minutes and it's not good. But I'll be happy to do it.
They were wonderful slides because I could not believe everything you had done. I knew some of it, but not all of it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Levers. Entertain a motion to accept the informational report from the libraries.
So move.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion? Ms. Smith?
Yolanda Clark,
Yolanda Clark, yes.
Maxine Drew,
Maxine Drew, yes.
Janie Humphries,
Janie Humphries, yes.
Randy Lopez,
Randy Lopez, yes.
Wanda Brownlee Page,
Wanda Brownlee Page, yes.
Dr. Nguyen,
Dr. Nguyen, yes.
Dr. Yeager.
Dr. Yeager, yes.
Thank you.
Motion passes. Thank you. Thank you again, Ms. Levers. Next on our agenda is our consent agenda. I would actually ask to remove item K. K is in Kansas from the consent agenda and table that proposal due to we have not had the chance for Mr. Goheen for legal to finish his legal review. So we just want to make sure that the contract has been reviewed by our legal counsel. So yes, Ms. Page.
Yeah, Mr. Lopez, I would like for us to also move item J.
Item J. Okay. Right. Dr. Nguyen?
I just have a question, so I will ask to set aside H like happy.
Okay. So would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda minus items H and J and K.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion? Ms. Smith?
Yolanda Clark,
Yolanda Clark, yes.
Maxine Drew,
Maxine Drew, yes.
Janie Humphries,
Janie Humphries, yes.
Randy Lopez,
Randy Lopez, yes.
Wanda Brownlee Page,
Wanda Brownlee Page, yes.
Dr. Nguyen,
Dr. Nguyen, yes.
Dr. Yeager.
Dr. Yeager, yes.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Motion passes. So item H, the RSP contract. Dr. Nguyen?
Sure, thank you, Mr. Lopez. I asked this question, and I'm looking back at the response. So again, my question is this a new contract? The way it reads, it appears, it was tabled, you say it was tabled because of the pandemic, but this is different than what they were supposed to do to begin with, right?
My understanding, and if, Lenore, if you're on, if you can chime in, my understanding based off of Dennis, when he transitioned out, and Lenore, in our conversation with RSP, this is what they were going to do prior to the pandemic, and this, based off some of the information that they had, it was just tailored to where we are now, but there was conversation, and I guess RSP annually looks at our boundaries but the scope of it would be specific to what the board was requesting. Lenore's on there now.
I would just like to add that when we brought the project forward again, we determined that we felt that the first boundary analysis that occurred before our COVID emergency, we wanted to revisit the changes that may have impacted our school district when we was in the thick of enrollment with doubts that we may not get all of our kids back. So we wanted to get appropriate data as of today so that we can make sure moving forward with the project that we would have accurate information and more up-to-date information, because those recommendations we were working off with the project was based on an older count, and that was in the initial contract. Excuse me. So they agreed that with our request that we needed to have a little more updated Wyandotte County stats, and so that we can move forward with the table. And that's why they recommended, in the stage of the work that we were in when we tabled it, we didn't feel like we could use the enrollment analysis at that time. So one of the reasons for the new replacement data, and then that was the cost of that replacement.
And thank you. So what is the cost for 2021, 22, please?
The enrollment analysis is the cost that you're seeing on the actual contract.
Correct.
And the other costs are already covered by the initial contract, so we do not see any more costs moving forward because they never got to complete the work.
Okay, so what is the cost that we don't have to pay, but have we paid it then?
We have paid the initial cost, and I believe, if my memory serves me correctly, it was around $66,000. And then when the work was tabled, the work was halted. And then at our request, we wanted to make sure that we were getting an accurate future read for potential 5 years out. Because we looked back at 10, and now we want to look back at 5 years out forward.
Okay, so help me, and Dr. Stubblefield, maybe you can help me understand. If we've already paid $66,000, is that what she said?
56.
56.
56? Okay, so the top of page 4, I guess. So that covers what, 21, 22, 22, 23? What is that 66, 56 cover?
Lenore, so for 21, 22, it says that it's $35,500. Will that be credited back to us for the enrollment analysis if we've already paid that?
No, they've already completed the actual enrollment analysis, but it is dated, which made me caution on the project. And if you recall, Dr. Stubblefield, we met with them, and they also agreed that they are seeing it across the nation.
Right.
That the work that they had already performed for other school districts brought some cautionary measures due to COVID and movement of our population. So they even, supported our request, and that's just the cost of that new enrollment analysis. There is a future cost at the end of the project, and I'm not recalling right off the top of my head what that is. If you have that in front of you, Dr. Stubblefield.
So what's in front of us is for the 21-22 school year, for the completion of the enrollment analysis, we would pay $35,500. And then for the 22-22 school year, for the enrollment analysis, it would be $15,500. And I think Dr. Nguyen's question is, are these new costs, even though this is something that they do annually, will we be responsible? Because this is about 56,000. It's about what it was previously.
Yeah, I think that is at the end of the project. That was in our agreement, yes.
Oh,
that cost is just in that contract, but it's not a cost that we need to pay now.
So once they complete that, we would pay that? Is that what you're saying?
I believe so, yes.
Okay.
So we've paid 56, and we have the end product?
They have the information. I don't know if it was presented. I guess it was not presented to the board, but they did do an enrollment analysis. Was it last year or right before the pandemic, Lenore?
Yes, it was right before the pandemic, and we did not get an ending project on that they spent on that original contract to continue with the work that we had originally planned based on the first contract.
I'm sorry, I don't understand that. We paid $56,000, but we don't have an end product? We don't have an end product for the $56,000? Now we're going to pay a second $56,000?
No,
I'm
we
confused.
continued the work behind the scenes, but we were never able to present our recommendations.
So
the
there's
board
an end product, it was just never presented
Because of COVID.
because of COVID. So when they come to present, they can share the information of the end product, which they should and would, from the previous contract in comparison to this, what they'll do again for the boundary analysis for this year. So they just have never, there's an end product, it wasn't never presented here, is my understanding.
Thank you.
Other questions? Ms. Humphries?
Move to approve.
I second.
Moved and seconded. Questions or discussion?
Is Mr.
Dr. Nguyen?
Mr.
Yes.
Lopez, so is there a plan to us to receive the first result of $56,000? I mean, it's a drop in the bucket for our total budget, but how do we know we're not going to get the duplicate of what they've already done? We haven't seen the first product. So do you plan on presenting it to us?
Yeah, so they are scheduled to present to the board, I believe, on either November or December. We only have one November meeting, so I believe it's November 9th. And we will make sure they show what the boundary analysis was pre-COVID and then what it is now. So we'll make sure they present both products.
And can we
at
get
that time.
the document before the meeting?
Yeah, so Dr. Turan and I'll get it and send it to you prior to then, yeah.
Thank you. Other questions or discussion? Ms. Smith, roll call, please.
Yolanda Clark,
Yolanda Clark, yes.
Maxine Drew,
Maxine Drew, yes.
Janie Humphries,
Janie Humphries, yes.
Randy Lopez,
Randy Lopez, yes.
Wanda Brownlee Page,
Wanda Brownlee Page, no.
Dr. Nguyen,
Dr. Nguyen, no.
Dr. Yeager.
Dr. Yeager, yes.
Motion carries. Thank you. The next item is item J. Ms. Page, you had a question?
Yeah, I don't have a question. I respect the right of the superintendent to do emergency repairs. Don't have an argument with that. And I did read the information that was sent out to us, but it's just a statement. And I know in the statement, they said they had reached out to smaller companies. But I wish we would continue to do that, especially for those small businesses who are taxpayers, who live in Wyandotte County. We got to do a better job of reaching out to them when we can. Now, I know some things they can't do, but we need to spread the wealth and give everybody an opportunity. And these same people we depend on and who give us donations, and I think we can give something back. It's not, but at least give them the opportunity to apply and to get in and make sure they know how to do it. Because a lot of times they don't know where and how to do it. So that's just my statement. I would like to really see us do that. And I don't know if we can legally have a policy to say that we at least need to reach out to them when they can apply and do certain jobs. Because we got to give something back to our communities. It's disheartening to go to these Chamber of Commerce things and everybody who comes in from Johnson County. Now, I'm not knocking them, but can we spread the wealth, give everybody a piece of the pie? That's just my statement. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Page. Dr. Nguyen?
I'd like to make a request of you, Mr. Lopez, that one of the workshops, we look at a buy local policy. You, as a member of the Kansas City, Kansas Chamber, I've spoken with a couple of their members, and in their, for lack of a better word, legislative priorities, they've been speaking with me to ask the board to look at a buy local policy. And so at the workshop, perhaps we can look at that. In your bidding process, there is leeway if bids are close. But this would be a separate standalone buy local policy. And it's not, buy tomatoes off the corner or oranges at the entry of the freeway, but professional services, contracts, things that they can bid on. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Nguyen. Other questions?
Randy, I have a question. When is the proposed work supposed to be started if this is approved today?
Hello, Dr. Stubblefield, President Lopez and board. This is Doug Clemens, Director of Physical Properties. We moved forward with the approval of Dr. Stubblefield as an emergency repair, so they actually started that repair work today.
Thank you.
So then why is it on the consent agenda? That was my question, because I passed by there and they were doing the work. And I wondered why it was on the consent agenda.
Well, I believe it's there because, one, the structure was it could have caused more damage, so we needed to bring it forth here, one, because of the cost, and then two, the board would need to approve it. So it was an emergency, and that's why it was done before it actually went there.
That was my concern too, because when I drove by there, I saw the construction already have started as well.
Thank you. So I'll make sure, I'll own that and make sure that the items like that don't get placed on the consent agenda, but rather get updated for the board. So thank you.
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Further questions? Ms. Smith, roll call, please.
Yolanda Clark,
Yolanda Clark, yes.
Maxine Drew,
Maxine Drew, yes.
Janie Humphries,
Janie Humphries, yes.
Randy Lopez,
Randy Lopez, yes.
Wanda Brownlee Page,
Wanda Brownlee Page, yes.
Dr. Nguyen,
Dr. Nguyen, yes.
Dr. Yeager.
Dr. Yeager, yes.
Thank you.
Motion carries. Thank you. And item K, again, we'll table just to allow our legal counsel to complete the legal review of the contract and MOU. Next on our agenda, new business, we have from Dr. Stubblefield an environmental scan and academic review proposal.
Several of the information for this particular request today is for information only. I have shared it with you previously, and this is just for KU to move forward to begin our environmental scan and academic review. I will share that they have started to talk with staff as part of what they have committed to do. They are doing a lot of services in kind, and so that portion that they've started to organize as part of the in-kind service until the full component is approved by the board. And I will welcome any questions.
Dr. Nguyen, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Lopez. So as I read through it, are these written weekly updates?
Yes, they will provide something written to me or to the board directly so that the board will know what the progress is and what the information that they are gathering. It'll probably also include a forecast of what they will be doing the next week or in the upcoming weeks, or whom they're speaking to and that kind of thing, yes.
So the document states that they start in September. So do they have weekly update of what they've found already?
They have not. The September conversations have been primarily with myself and the information from some board members and others of what should be included. So In that, I've provided the updates, but once they start wholeheartedly, they will give the weekly updates. But I can definitely, if they have some written things, ask them to forward it to me to share with you. But in September, they were just basically gathering information to make sure that they were covering the areas that they have included in this proposal.
And I guess in one of the documents, what is the initiate, monitor, process PowerPoint or Power 2020? I can't find the page. I think it was documents that they were reviewing.
So there were documents that either I found or someone shared with me that gave some insight on other studies or things that were done by previous superintendents or department leaders, so that they weren't starting from ground zero. And at one time, there was a literacy review that was done for the district. I don't know if it's that one.
I found it. It's on page 5, under context, the 3rd bullet point, initiative, monitor, process, PowerPoint. Maybe we saw it and it's just under a different name.
Cabinet strategic, the action blue, are you talking about the Cabinet Planning Initiative Action Blueprint?
No, page 5, the appendix. Documents, I guess, that they're going to, they're going to review. KCK, Strategic Initiative Monitor Process PowerPoint.
So the organization that did the strategic plan shared several documents with me.
Oh, that's what that is.
And I shared those with them so they would understand the process and planning that went into the strategic plan.
And I'm sorry, I just don't know. What is SWOT analysis?
SWOT analysis? Okay, I should know this. Dr. Campbell, you're nodding. You know what the S?
Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats.
Okay.
Excuse me?
Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats.
Okay, thank you.
And I know that, but.
And we have a document that already exists on that?
No, that's a strategy that's used when looking at information
Okay.
and gathering information.
Well, I look forward to us being updated,
Thank you.
because it includes a lot of things that we've never seen before. Maybe, excuse me, I've never seen before. I don't know other board members. So thank you.
So just so the board will know what they're reviewing, I can gather that and send it to you. These are just all internal documents that either I stumbled across or somebody shared with me.
Thank you. Additional questions? Okay. Dr. Stubblefield, were you, is this for informational purposes
This was for
tonight?
informational
Okay.
purposes. If there are not any questions, it'll just be on consent on the 26th.
Thank you. All right. Thank you, board. If you have additional questions, please contact Dr. Stubblefield. Next on our agenda, our board updates and approvals. We'll invite Mr. Stephen Linkus to give us an update on our staff testing.
Good evening, Board President Lopez, Vice President Clark, fellow members of the board, Dr. Stubblefield. Thank you for the opportunity to come up for the third time and talk about vaccination policy and as we move forward to looking something to put into our district. So just some updates. The first thing I just wanted to update you about is the COVID dashboard. So for the week of September 25th to October 1st, we had 25 confirmed student cases and 6 staff. I would like to say, but I don't want to say it too loudly, is that is a drop. So we are seeing some decrease, and I'm knocking on wood as I say that, as we hope that this trend continues, but it is significantly less than the numbers I showed you 2 weeks ago for the week that we saw at that time. So looking at the policy, after listening to you all a couple weeks ago, conferring with Dr. Stubblefield, other members of staff, this is what we're bringing forward. So the first piece is the Kansas City, Kansas Public Schools will highly encourage all eligible staff and on-site volunteers to get vaccinated against COVID-19 on or before December 3rd, 2021. I know in previous presentations we talked about 45 days. but we also have something called Thanksgiving that would come during that time. We also know that people travel and does throw some wrenches into things we're doing. So that kind of put us on a really good timeline. It's a little more than 45, but it does put us within a good time period. The second piece to that I just want to be very transparent about is when we say fully vaccinated, it's the 2 shots. We know that at this point, not everyone is eligible to get a third. We also know that Pfizer is also the only shot that has been approved for the booster. Moderna is, I guess, looking for that type of, is looking for their approval, and Johnson & Johnson is looking for their second one as well. So if proof of that full vaccination is not on file with us on or before the 3rd, KCKPS staff and on-site volunteers will be required to participate in weekly COVID-19 testing protocol. This was a little different than the previous because in listening to our board, one of the things that was brought up was about our volunteers being tested. So the way we looked at this is in 2 ways. Number one, our groups that are at the buildings daily, weekly, or very frequently, we would assign a testing site for those individuals. So they would be like our staff, they would have somewhere they would test. Now, our volunteers who, let's say I have a child at Fisk Elementary, I want to go read, I'm going to be part of something, or I'm coming in to present. Our expectation is that 24 hours before I'm at the building, I bring proof of a negative test or vaccination status. Along with the volunteers, with our new, as we go forward with a policy, when the board approves one, all new volunteers coming into the system, when they do their training, their orientation, they will provide proof of vaccination, or they will know about having to engage in the weekly testing. We do know that keeping safe schools as well as mitigation practices in place is very important, and we heard loud and clear from the board that we do want to keep these things in motion. Staff who don't comply with the testing policy and do not have vaccination on file will be subject to KCKPS progressive discipline if they're not doing the testing. So we've talked about the progressive discipline before in regards to masking. So there are some examples there of how that works. We're not looking to get rid of anybody. We want to maintain our staff. We want everybody here. And that's why I know the board went with highly encouraged, because we did want to give people options. But in the same token, in promotion of safety with a policy that would say it's highly encouraged, there does have to be steps taken if people choose not to comply. USD staff 500 provide proof of vaccination will receive 5 additional sick leave days to their annual contract for the 21-22 school year. It'll be prorated if you're a half-time or 0.75% employee. Something else that came forward from this is some principals came forward to Dr. Stubblefield to talk to her about if the staff receive these, but they do not use the 5 days during the school year, that potentially, this would take board action, we could do a reimbursement and they can be paid for those 5 days if they don't use them. That is something we're bringing as an idea.
And I just want to
Yeah.
offer some perspective around that. The concern was with the shortage of subs, and if people have extra days, they may just take them off. But to incentivize them, if they're not sick and they do not need to use the day, to reimburse them at the daily rate that we would pay subs, which is $150 per day, which would end up being, if my math is right, $750 that they could receive at the end of the school year. So if they didn't use the days, they still would have an incentive. If they're not sick and don't need the days, they would have an incentive not to use the days in order to get reimbursed for that. And that was brought forth to us by some principals and also some other staff members. And I just talked with Mr. Linkus and said that's something that, in talking with Greg and HR, that we can easily carry out as an option with the 5 days or the prorated days based on your FTE. And that would be consistent across all employee groups. We wouldn't, like for classified staff members, we wouldn't reduce the value of the day just to keep it clean, because the days are equivalent to the days. Would be my recommendation. It's for any employee who didn't use it, they would be eligible for the reimbursement for just those 5 days.
And continuing with the policy, we did, at the last board meeting, there was discussion about a maximum payout of days. So at this point, the number that did come forth in the last meeting was 14. So within this particular policy, we said 14 days of pay will be covered if a staff member is out sick. And that's covered by the district. That is not taking out from an individual's sick time. So that would be paid for. They would still have their sick time. It would not be something that they would have to pay out of their own pocket. And at this juncture, that would be for vaccinated or non-vaccinated staff. We're not going to distinguish that. So just want to get some clarity around that as we bring this forward. The implementation timeline. So a couple of things we're looking at doing is when we get an approval on a policy, we're going to look at some pilot sites where we can start some of this testing, get an idea of how it works, how many people we need, because it is going to look different at different sites. A Wyandotte with over 100 employees, not saying all of them will be tested, but it's a much larger number than, say, a Banneker or a Carruthers or some of our smaller campuses. Same token, more employees, less employees. We also have to figure out how to staff those areas to do the testing. December 6th would be the week we would be targeting to get this in motion. And on bullet 3, I apologize because I did leave some information out. So the non-vaccinated adults would test weekly, but we would also look at testing for student athletes for test to play. We would also look at test to learn, which is part of Kansas School as our state.
KDHE has a, and test to learn and play go hand in hand. If students, whether they're in activities or athletics, were to be considered a close contact, there are several districts in the state who are already implementing this, so students can stay in school and not be quarantined as long as they're not negative. As long as they're not positive. So we, regardless of what happens with this, we are working with KDHE to use those grant dollars to provide that for our students so that they can be in school in a safe manner as long as they are testing negative. And this would only be implemented if they were a close contact and or experiencing symptoms. We will be able to provide that to our families. On site would be ideal, or either at a neutral location accessible to all of our families, so that the students can be in school if they're not testing positive.
And lastly, as previously stated, the current group we work with, we do have a contract that says test results will be back within 24 hours. So the expectation is we continue to work with them and that they would continue to be able to provide the service within 24 hours. I know that was a lot of information in a few slides. So any questions?
Mr. Linkus, questions? I know Dr. Yeager had a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, what is the cost that it would be for the 5 days that we are talking about reimbursement? Have you calculated how much it would cost as of now based upon those who are vaccinated?
We don't have an actual accurate number of who's vaccinated or who's not, but if we went with, and I can do some quick math, the last time, based off those who responded, it was about 60%. So maximum cost at 60% times 750, assuming everybody would get 5 days and then it's not prorated. Just one second. Somebody else is faster with their. If you. Okay, it's at least 1.5 million dollars.
I would ask that we would consider reducing that number to 2 or 3 days. 5 days is a lot. I've been thinking about that, and we do have a number of shortages in our building. And if they decided to opt out of taking the money versus, being there, I think it still puts us in a compromising position to pay out that additional money and for staff to possibly not be there. So I would ask that we would consider maybe 2 days of reimbursement rather than the full 5.
What are most of the surrounding districts doing that have this similar policy?
So surrounding districts, the only comparable we have right now is Kansas City, Kansas Kansas City, Missouri School District. Other districts have not implemented testing or strongly encourage testing, and I am not sure if they incentivize that all. To my knowledge, I don't think they did.
I haven't
think
seen.
they just implemented the vaccination or testing requirement similar to the UG. I don't know if there was a incentive component from that. The component to incentivize was a recommendation that our local KNEA shared that some other districts across the country were using. And so we included that based off of some feedback that we received from some of those members.
So nationwide, some districts are looking at the 5-day incentive.
Some districts have looked at the 5-day incentive or reimbursement of some sort, yes. And some have not included it at all.
Other questions or further discussion? Dr. Nguyen?
Thank you. I have 3 questions. One, with the federal mandate, are the Head Start employees, that's the only group impacted with the federal mandate?
Yes.
Yes, so far. And I think
At
that's,
this point, I think there's some concern that that may also impact transportation, although it has not officially happened yet,
And when will we know?
whenever the feds decide to tell us.
Oh, that'd be tomorrow. Gotcha. Okay. Then the other 2 for you, Mr. Linkus. You said when the volunteers receive their orientation, how else will you inform the volunteers that this policy will be?
So new volunteers so that would cover new volunteers. So those coming forth from whatever the approval comes forward.
Right.
So our current volunteers, we would work with Lisa Garcia Stewart in Student Services because they're the ones who work with those groups because they do the orientation with them. And we would be contacting them and letting them know about whatever policy came forth and then what we would need from them in order for them to continue participation.
Okay. And the third, I don't think I understood. What is the progressive discipline policy?
So we have a progressive discipline policy as part of HR, and it's a coaching model. But since this is policy, if they did choose not to comply, it would be a violation.
Yeah.
So they would be part of that discipline ladder, and then there would be opportunities for them to correct behavior and not just an automatic you're terminated. We're trying to get people to stay at work, so we'd be working with them in order to coach and change behavior and hopefully get compliance.
Okay, but what is the
so
discipline
it's like
part?
a verbal warning or written warning.
Written warning.
And then Kelly, and so it goes verbal,
Suspension with pay.
written, suspension, and then
Termination.
if you go through all of the steps, yeah.
Is this on our website?
It's in
It's in our
the,
administrator guide.
and it's also in the negotiated
Yes.
agreement.
Negotiate agreement with
The
teachers?
Yes, with
What about
teachers,
other staff?
and then it's in the administrative guide for classified.
Okay, thank
Yes.
you.
Thank you. Other questions? Ms. Page?
I don't have a question. I have comments. First of all, I still disagree with highly encouraged, but that's a long debate. Public health issue. I'll keep saying that. And then lastly, if we do this, I think they should be able to get the financial option, either have the days or get paid for those 5 days. And 1 or 2 is not enough. It is not their fault. We're in the predicament that we're in, or we don't have enough teachers. And our teachers are working, and as well as all other staff, to no end to try to help to make it work. So they should be compensated. And if not, if they keep the 5 days, I'm old school. We were taught to keep our days, so when you get older, you'll have them at the end. So either they'll use them now or they'll use them later, but they should be compensated. But I still believe it is a public health issue. But I know we already voted the first time. I get it. I see the big picture, but it's a public health issue.
Thank you, Ms. Page.
Wanted to request, is this the final read of the draft?
This is the third read.
Second.
Yeah, I mean, unless there's going to be changes to it, I mean, that would be, but that would impact the date on which you would be able to have it be effective. So if you push it back with further changes and one additional read, And the deadline that you have in there to get the vaccination probably would need to be changed, because I don't think you'd have enough time.
It would push us into the new year, because just with December being shorter, there's 3 weeks, that would bump it back if this did go back. So we'd be looking at a January start time, and I'd have to look up the date of that first week.
My concern is the payout. I do not think that we need to pay out money. If it's like Ms. Page just said, if it maybe can roll over to the next school year so that people won't take it all at once, or if there needs to be stipulation around it. I think that needs to be ironed out so that we know what to expect. But due to the cost of being over $1 million out of our budget, I would not be in favor of paying out. So at this point, I know it would maybe cause a delay, but I think it's important that we make a determination tonight as to if the board, would agree to the stipulations and pass it, or if we're going to delay it and get the stipulations later. Randy, what is your direction?
Well, I would, it's the board's will. If the board wants to delay and add or change the language in the suggested policy that's brought forward, we can do that. I do think incentivizing programs have been effective in other areas and across the metro area in terms of increasing vaccination rates. So I do think that is helpful for us. I am mindful of our budget and wanting to make sure that we stay within budget both this year and in future years. However, I do know that a lot of areas are looking at incentives to help encourage people to become vaccinated. But to answer your question, Dr. Yeager, it's really the will of the board how you would like to move forward. Policies here in front of us now, are you asking for a motion to change the language, Dr. Yeager?
Well, if you would pull up the language again to clarify, because I don't think in the language it says we'll pay out. So if you could pull up the language for us to see.
Dr. Yeager, you're correct. That's not included in that, so we would have to add that. Then I also want to be clear that this wouldn't be coming from general budget. My understanding is that this could be included in our ESSER fund, so it would not be coming from, I'm not trying to influence anyone, but I just want to be clear about where the dollars can come from, because this is directly related to COVID. And so we could include that in our ESSER.
Yeah, and as the proposed policy currently reads, which is what we've carried over from the last meeting, it does not have a payout for those sick days. It just allows for those additional sick days. You could do it one of two ways. If you wanted to make that change, and if the board agreed to that, you could do that without an additional read, because it's a modification on the last day, which is still permissible under the way you guys have handled this. Or alternatively, you could review that particular issue and come back with a motion to modify the policy to allow for that at a later date. So those are kind of the two options I think you have.
I think the latter option would be something of support. What would the language be around that, Greg?
Well,
Would that be a motion?
you would just move to approve the policy as presented, and then that would set your date, that would set the requirements, and then somebody would come back at the next board meeting with a proposal on how you would want to handle if you're going to permit payout of those sick days if they're not used.
That would be acceptable to me.
Is there a motion to accept the policy as presented tonight?
So move.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Further discussion or questions?
I would ask Randy if you would note that I'll be requesting that for the next board meeting.
Thank you, Dr.
Or I don't know if there's room before at our special meeting. Either way, I'll be bringing it up again for us to have an in-depth discussion about it.
Thank you. Ms. Clark?
So I just want to be clear, the motion today would cover what's been presented, but the logistics of it. So when this time would roll over, one question that came to mind is how will we track this 5 days? Because if it's in the regular bucket, how do you know? So is there a separate bucket that would be set? So those type of logistics would be covered.
Yeah, we can write those pieces up. We'll work with Human Resources on that.
Okay, I am in agreement that the 5 days is out there, that's what we've talked about, and I am, like Ms. Page, I struggle removing any time. I think that they should definitely be taken care of for that time. Okay.
Other questions or discussion?
And
Ms.
I just-
Humphrey? Oh, Dr.
I
Stubblefield.
just have one question about the date. If we pass it tonight, does that give everyone enough time to get the 2 shots?
It does. If they were to go this week, they could then go back in 3 weeks, and that gives them those extra weeks beyond the second shot to where the vaccine is fully functional. So this does give them the time bubble that would be needed.
Okay, I just want to make sure we have enough time built in there.
And can I just make, my only other comment, this is big. This is big for our staff, and so I personally feel like I've witnessed too many unclean processes and unclean communication. So I just want to make sure, in my personal opinion, that it's clean. Our staff understands where it's coming from, what's there. They know where to go if they have questions. And so I think that's huge. I don't think you can overly communicate at this point because we've just seen too many processes that have had too many huge question marks around them.
Also, the biggest concern I've received is employees want to make sure that they are paid or compensated for the time they may have to take off to go to a testing site, that they don't want to count it against them or their time if they have to do it during working hours, that they want to be properly compensated for going to those testing sites.
And what we're looking at currently is, we are looking at this point to test at every school site, and then at the different sites like the NCO, transportation, and so forth. So we're trying to make it as easily as possible for the employee, because we do know that we have a diverse employee group. Some drive to work, some catch a bus, some get a ride with the coworker. So we definitely are cognizant of that and want to be supported if they do have to test.
Thank you. Ms. Smith, roll call vote, please.
Yolanda Clark,
Yolanda Clark, yes.
Maxine Drew,
Maxine Drew, yes.
Janie Humphries,
Janie Humphries, yes.
Randy Lopez,
Randy Lopez, yes.
Wanda Brownlee Page,
Wanda Brownlee Page, no.
Dr. Nguyen,
Dr. Nguyen, yes.
Dr. Yeager.
Dr. Yeager, yes.
Thank you.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Linkus and staff. Next on our agenda is to discuss our athletics eligibility modification. This has been presented to the board on a couple of different occasions. We do have Ms. Romstad here to update us on any modifications from the previous discussion, and this is up for potential action tonight from the board.
Okay, good evening, President Lopez, members of the board, Dr. Stubblefield. As it was mentioned, that this is the third time the amendment has been brought to the board. In a brief bullet points, we're looking at a minimum, students with Fs or GPAs, meeting with teachers after school. They have to attend that as part of their SSP, or they're not allowed to practice or compete that week. I did spend some time looking at the districts around us, their policies, and also Wichita. And there were no eligibility policies different than following KCKPS on their website. So, I am trying to look and see what everybody's navigating some of these same things with quarantines, teachers being gone, students being gone. So at this time, if there's any questions.
Ms. Humphries?
I submitted some questions to you, and you answered them, and the one thing that's confusing to me is that you stated that in the current policy, the C average only applies to middle school students, and that's not what it is in the current policy. It applies to high school students, too, in our JH policy. It says, grades for the purpose of eligibility will be calculated and used in all courses for which the student is enrolled. The student must maintain a current year GPA of 2.0 with no grades of F on a 4-point scale. So current policy does apply to high school and middle school.
The C is under the middle school portion of that district eligibility policy.
It's under the high school.
So I'm confused as far as I guess I'm not understanding the question you're asking me.
What I'm saying is you're telling us that the C average only applies to middle school students, which is incorrect. In the current policy, it applies to high school students also.
The eligibility policy for the senior level is no Fs after 2 weeks after the progress reports, or a GPA lower than 2.0.
Yeah, but you had some inaccuracies in the response to us when you're saying it only applied to the middle schools, not the high schools. But I also asked what kind of accountability there was going to be for the student raising their grade, and you didn't have a response to that. But in our policy, it states, let's see, they have to be checked on every 2 weeks. Their grade has to come up within 2 weeks, or they're no longer eligible for the policy.
2 weeks after the midterm.
Are we going to fulfill that with this change?
We're asking that we not suspend them from practice and competing, but we will be checking actually weekly to let kids know where they're at so they can get the proper support they need from teachers after school.
But if they're not progressing, if they're not making any progress, what's the repercussions?
As I put, I believe in my answer, at any point we can reevaluate the SSP to see if there's something else we need, resources we would have, or something else we can ask.
But if they're not progressing, is there a cutoff time? Is there a time like you have 2 weeks to make some progress, or you're no longer able to play?
Right, I understand your question. I think the reason that I'm bringing the amendment to us is because we don't control the 2-week time frame when someone's quarantined and out for 14 days, or if a teacher's absent and grades can't be put in. And so if we did it on a certain time frame, we would never be able to be fair to kids that are caught in a quarantine or a teacher that's out. I mean, if you don't have those pieces, then it makes complete sense to pick dates, and use them as reference. But the academic progress is going to be dependent upon them being in class. And if they're held out of class due to exposure in a quarantine, and then they're making up the assignments and they're not being input, we're trying to keep them from being held out of practice or games.
But this isn't applying just to quarantined students. This is applying to all students, correct?
This would apply because there are times when teachers are quarantined and out as well, where they can't put the grades in the same the time frame that you're looking at.
So do we have any kind of time frame that they have to have their grades up, that we have to see progress?
The KCKPS requires the 5 passing grades a semester. That would be the time frame that we would follow.
KCKPS requires that they pass 5 out of 7.
Correct.
Our district has always had, if they have any Fs, they're not eligible.
That's correct.
We've had stricter.
Correct.
Because we expect more out of our students than KCKPS does.
Correct.
So if we adopt this for the whole year, a student cannot make any progress, and we're still going to let them compete. Is that correct?
I think if I'm understanding you, we wouldn't hold them we would allow them to practice, but they would not necessarily be able to compete. So that is how, unless I'm misunderstanding they wouldn't be missing practice, but if they don't have if there was like 2 weeks and there was no progress,
Correct.
then unless I'm misunderstanding too, I think the natural consequences would be they would not be competing, but once they had it up, they wouldn't have missed the practice, so they would be ready to compete. Am I misinterpreting that?
No, we're looking to find them each week academic progress, to compare them to the week before, to see where they're at, to make sure that they're working towards making up assignments, taking exams, or whatever the teacher is requesting of them to pass. So we will be evaluating that every week. If someone does not show up to do that SSP, then they will not be able to play that week. But
They can show up and not be progressing.
they could show up and do the things that teachers require in them, yes.
So, I know, oh, go ahead. Ms. Clark, and then I know Dr. Yeager has a question as well.
I was just going to say, I don't think that answered Ms. Humphrey's question. I think the way you put it, flipped it back around, so.
So let me finish that one. So what I'm saying is the current proposal does not have what you're requesting now, and that is the fact that if you're not progressing after a period of time, that you would practice and not play. I think that's what you're asking me, that we want to see progress. We want to see academic progress. And if they're not progressing, and you mentioned 2 weeks.
That's what's in our current policy.
That's what's in the current policy based on the first time looking at that at the 2 weeks after the progress report comes out. That's correct. This policy follows the KCKPS guidelines, basically, which says that as long as the previous semester you pass the adequate number of classes, you may practice and compete. I don't have a 2-week guideline in there to recheck progress, but we do check progress every week when we check grades, you know.
I guess I really have a problem with the fact that there's no carrot for the kids to get their grade up if we pass this. We're saying that they may fail a class this semester, but they can still go out for, middle school volleyball's over, basketball is starting.
Right.
Okay, if their grades are not up because they've been an SSP for volleyball, what keeps them from participating in basketball when obviously they're not making progress?
Sure, and if they're not making progress, we need to change the support plan so
we
that
don't
it
have
helps them gain,
But this policy doesn't give us anything
correct,
to enforce that.
correct.
Dr. Yeager?
Yeah, so my concern is, according to Ms. Bromstead, did you say Piper, Turner, Edwardsville, our surrounding school districts do not have an additional policy? They strictly go on KCKPS. Is that what you said?
I looked at the larger school districts around us and the Wichita Public Schools, since they were similar, using KCKPS policies. None of them had a stricter guideline eligibility-wise with regards to student activities and participation. They basically say they follow KCKPS, because we are members of KCKPS, and as a member, you must follow KCKPS guidelines. So that's what I found in the surrounding schools. And I want to say, I am a proponent of setting higher standards. That's not what I'm trying to step away from. I actually see the difficulty with the quarantines to getting assignments done, getting them graded, and getting them in a way that it could hold kids out. And I do understand progress is very, very important. And to explain part of the accountability that you asked, not only are the athletic directors looking at weekly grades, coaches, but they're sending me copies of those so that I can take a look and look at where I'm seeing no progress or where I'm seeing maybe a student become a multiple F student, so that I can ask that question as to, does the SSP need to change? Just another set of eyes on it. We don't want to see the kids fail. We want to see them progress.
So here's my concern. My point is, we are penalizing students because of COVID. It's been explained multiple times that there is a delay in grading. We've had complaints from our community year after year, season after season, especially during COVID. They are tired of being treated different because they're in our district. If they're at Piper versus us, there is no issue. They're going to play, they're going to get the support, they're not going to be looked at different. And we keep saying, what is the carrot? Let's look at this. We penalize students, do not let them play, and they're penalized. They're depressed. They decide they can't go out for the only thing that gives them joy to keep them in school, to keep them in high school. That's the only mentor. That's the only person that they have is that coach. So now we take it from them, and they decide to drop out. That's it. So we're thinking, okay, they're not supported. We've explained we're going to do wraparound support. We check their grades every week. We want them to improve. For some of our kids, this is the only thing keeping them in school. once we take that away, what happens to them? We have to really take a true reality. What happens to that family? What happens to our community? We know that, sure, we want high standards and we expect high excellence from our students, but some students need a little more. And I agree that we need to listen to what Ms. Romstead is saying, go to the KCKPS guidelines. If we need to reevaluate after a couple of months, 3 months, 6 months to see if it's working, or 3 months to see if it's working, but we need to support this. It's important enough that she is bringing it to us and the superintendent is bringing this to us because they see the need. If we go to those games, we see the students, we look them in the face, we see them sitting out from not playing, and to say that they continually need to be hit over the head, not hit over the head, that's the wrong phrase, be continue to be penalized when they're trying their best to improve is a disservice to our students who are trying. Obviously, if they're going out for a sport, they know our expectations, and we should give them the benefit of the doubt and keep working with them rather than deny what is being requested tonight. So I'm in full support of it. I think that our student athletes plus our coaches are doing everything possible with COVID to do the best that they can do.
Thank you, Dr. Yeager. I do think that the spirit of the policy suggestion tonight is in a very positive light, similar to what Dr. Yeager is presenting, to try to support and find additional ways to support our students. I don't think that that we're trying to let our students skate by. At least that's my understanding of what's being presented. It really is really trying to support and find ways to help our students continue to participate in some of these activities. So, thank you. And I know Dr. Lynn had a comment.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
I'm a little challenged by the internal contradiction of the presentation and then your comments. The SSP is a core part of this.
Yes, it is a very
okay?
important part of it.
But in your comments, you contradict yourself by saying, since most students do not want to make the appointment with a teacher after school each day, that's a problem, because if the core part of SSP, the student make the appointment, you've already said the students are not going to do it. You've said it, since most students. And then you said that, here it goes back to the accountability piece. So the athletic director monitors grades. It can be adjusted. It's not well developed, and it's not, it contradicts itself. If the students making the appointment is a major component, and the teacher then follows up, because your selling point is that the student has time now to meet with the teacher and get the assignments. You've already said the students are going to do it, not going to do it, and so it has no validity. It has internal contradictions. And unless you say that student is required, and that, quarantine does not mean, I guess if they're positive and they're sick, but I think we're already saying that they get their assignments on Canvas. So, we're trying to pick up for when those assignments are missed, but and I'll say it again, if the SSP is a major component, you've got contradictions, and it is not well developed.
No, I understand what you see. The question I was asked was about incentive, and I was making the point that you're right, the SSP is required, they have to attend. What we have seen is the students know that they have to go set up an appointment Thursday or Friday for the next week, and what's happening is they're getting a lot of the work completed before that next Monday so that they can go see the teacher, the assignment's turned in, and they don't have to stay and work because the work's been turned in. What I'm validating is the incentive for the student. What we've seen is they're getting the work done. A majority of them, it's assignments. Now, for those students who need to be tutored and need help, that's a different thing. But for those that are lacking getting assignments, time management, getting them done. They've been out. They're getting them done because they want to be able to turn them in so they don't have to. It raises their grade so they don't have to have the
I
required SSP.
understand what you're saying. It's not mandated in this SSP. That's what I'm saying. And you know, because you've already said, the students are not going to make the appointment. Those who turned in their papers, you've covered it. You've answered that.
If they don't make the appointment and they have an F, they're not going to play that week. They're required to go.
That's not stated here.
I think it, go ahead, Dr. Stubblefield.
So there are internal contradictions, and until you can get the accountability pieces in there, I can't support this.
So one of the things I think would probably be a larger policy discussion, because I think there are two things happening here, and I'm just saying, because when I'm looking at the policy, the SSP and those things are a part of the policy, whether we change it or not. And some of the questions around that, I think, as we pointed out last week, there are some practices or assumptions that may have been going on that are not fleshed out in policy, which may be bigger. Because I think what we were saying is that students will still be able to engage in practice, and if they're making progress while they're in COVID. And if I'm misunderstanding that, please clarify that. But if there's no progress and they still have Fs, they would not be able to compete. That's the part of the policy in the bigger picture for directly related to the pandemic that we were saying needs to be, some of the questions around the SSP, I think that's a larger policy discussion that we probably need to have, whether this passes or not, because that's a part of the policy if we don't make the modifications.
So where does that say that in the policy?
In policy, it says.
In this revised, amended policy? Because my understanding is that you can you can practice and compete.
If you're making progress, right? But
It's not stated.
it's not written?
No.
Okay.
Unless, if you show it, then I stand corrected.
Mr. Lopez, can I share something? So when we went to these weekly grade checks 2 years ago, when Ms. Romstead came on as district athletic director, we started the year with roughly 45% of our athletes having Fs. When we moved to the weekly reports, we finished that first season, and granted, it's hard to compare to last year because COVID, really threw some curveballs. But the last time we actually had sports like we did now, we saw our numbers drop between 8 to 15% of student athletes having 1 F. It does make a significant growth to the student. It does put that type of positive academic push that we want for our kids. And I would just like to share that because it has worked. Also, last year when we put this policy in on the short term, we saw significant gains in the students and them getting eligible. So I do understand the concerns. Those are some things that Ms. Romstead, myself, Dr. Stubblefield can, reflect on. But I do think this does bring a very positive push to keep students engaged and continue things moving forward to try to get to the academic place we want to be.
Mr. Lopez, that's the point, that there was an end time, so that the student knew if they did not complete that progress, they could not compete. This is saying the whole year is open. So I understand, and we accepted that it was short-term, and that time frame was very clear to that student, that if he or she wanted to compete, was it like 1st of February? Because it was over Christmas.
It was at the end of the semester.
Right. So,
January,
and
mid-January.
apparently your coaches did something, so it worked. But this policy is not that policy. This is totally open-ended to the end of the year.
That policy was not set up because of quarantines. It was set up because of the remote environment, trying to get them access and get them in the building.
Loss of learning.
Sure.
We're all on the same page.
Sure.
Dr. Yeager?
Yes, I would like to make a motion that we approve the athletics eligibility modifications. Again, this policy is written to support our athletes. Thank you, Stephen Linkos, for reminding us the modifications worked before. We're doing our due diligence. Athletes are back on board, and they need that opportunity. They need the opportunity to have that incentive, which is playing. So thank you so much for clarification on that you do. So I make a motion that we go ahead and approve it.
Motion on the floor, is there a second?
Second.
There's a second. Further discussion or questions?
I just second that motion, and the reason I second it is because I do have teenagers, and I do see the impact of sports versus non-sports. I do agree that it is very open-ended, and I hope there is an accountability factor there. I don't know if it's at the end of the season. I'm not really sure how that works, but I think there is some mental health that goes along with sports. I've witnessed it. I've sat through it. So I am trusting you and Dr. Stubblefield to work out the logistics there. But I am 100% able to support our students being active in sports, maybe not playing like Dr. Stubblefield just said, but if I attend practice, as it was pointed out, a lot of these kids, they need their coaches. And when you remove them from that, you've almost set them up to fail.
Dr. Nguyen?
You know, I'll take the position of some of our staff. I'm offended by the even thought of my no vote means I don't support student athletes. I'm offended by the thought that wanting a policy that has accountability, not hope. We don't make policies based on hope. We make policies based on components of that policy. So come May, I have 4 Fs. Well, I hoped my way all the way through the end semester. But you don't make policies without accountability, in my opinion. So thank you.
I'll respond back to that. So my vote is not directed towards anyone. I'm very familiar with policies, our right policies. From a board perspective, in my opinion, I am trusting these two to move forward with what takes place next.
Ms. Humphries?
And I would comment that I'm offended that we would think that putting the policy back on KCKPS means that there's nothing set against, we're just going out here, leaving it open. The reality is KCKPS is the standard. KCKPS governs our sports. KCKPS governs all of the sports. So I'm offended that we are saying that we are the sole people making a policy for sports, which is not true. KCKPS, as was mentioned many times, governs what the sports barrier should be. And all the schools surrounding us that our students are competing against have a different standard. And parents continually say, give us standards that are similar to our counterparts. So it's important that we understand that I'm offended that you would think that we're just approving it open without knowledge, without background, without policy knowledge, because we have knowledge, we understand what's going on, and most importantly, we have a right to make our own opinion without feeling offended or that we're pinpointing a certain person. No one voted against a certain person on the other board. We're stating our opinions just like everyone else.
Ms. Humphries?
I would like to say that, as you know, I attend the sporting events frequently. I have no problem with the students practicing while they're bringing their grades up because it's important, the interaction with the coaches and their teammates, it helps support them. I do have a problem with them competing with failing grades. I want us to remember that last year we heard a lot from our community about kids not participating in sports because that was going to hurt their scholarship opportunities, et cetera. No college is going to give a child a scholarship with failing grades, whether it's a sports scholarship or whatever. So they need to know that it goes hand in hand. I don't think requiring passing grade is asking too much if we're providing the support that our students need, whether they're in sports or not. But if the understanding is that they practice, but they don't compete till they show progress, that doesn't mean they're up to A, doesn't mean they're up to C, but are they progressing? Then I could support it. But just open-ended without any type of deadline, whether it's 2 weeks, 4 weeks, or whatever. There needs to be progress shown. Otherwise, the student obviously needs more academic support
I do
than the
think-
30 minutes, so.
I'm sorry, Ms. Humphries. And I do think, again, the spirit of what's being presented is really to support the student athletes, making sure that the way it's written, the way I read it, is that they are required to participate in the SSP, and students who don't follow their SSP will not be allowed to practice or play, which includes those grade checks, those pieces in place to make sure that they're being monitored. So I believe that the spirit of what's being brought forward is to continue to support our students and student athletes. Ms. Page, and then we're going to go to vote.
No, I was just going to say, I too think that they should be required to keep their grades up in order to play. Now, one piece Ms. Clark said, and we have funds through the ESSER program, that mental health piece, that's something we should be doing. If they're struggling, why is that not a part of it? We need to help them. We got funds, the money is supposed to be for the kids. What kind of counseling are we offering to them to help them make it through?
So I'll just say that I know our student services department is working through their trauma training, trauma-sensitive practices to support our students. We do have counselors who are providing some of those, and therapists who are providing some of those mental health resources for students, including our student athletes. So
I get what you're saying.
I just want to make sure that there's
That
nothing.
should be a part of their program in addition to.
Right.
If they're struggling that hard, then they need some help. And I don't know why that can't be a part of what you have here. Because something is obviously wrong.
I think it is a part, and I don't want people to
Now, I'm not
hear
saying
that
they're not getting any
they're not
counseling,
getting the
student
support.
service. I'm saying it should be even more. If that student athlete is struggling that hard, they need more, and there's funds to provide it. And I'm not saying student service, so quote me correctly. I didn't say student services hadn't done anything, but I'm saying as a part of her program, why can't that be there for them after school, as well as if you're coming for tutoring, we got some counselors here. If you need some help, they can help them.
Thank you, Ms. Page. Ms. Smith, would you do a roll call vote?
Yolanda Clark,
Yolanda Clark, yes.
Maxine Drew,
Maxine Drew, yes.
Janie Humphries,
Janie Humphries, yes.
Randy Lopez,
Randy Lopez, yes.
Wanda Brownlee Page,
Wanda Brownlee Page, no.
Dr. Nguyen,
Dr. Nguyen, no.
Dr. Yeager.
Dr. Yeager, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Motion carries. Thank you, board, for that discussion, thoughtful dialogue and discussion. Thank you, Ms. Romstad and Mr. Linkus, for the thoughtful input and time you've put into this policy suggestion for us. Next on our agenda is an item to approve a grant agreement. I am going to recuse myself and step out of the room, and I will let Ms. Clark lead this section of the meeting. Thank you.
C. Number 9C.
Thank you. I was still on the last conversation. So we need a motion to approve? Is that where we are? I would like to entertain a motion to approve item C, item number 9, item C on our agenda.
So move.
I second it.
Any comments? All right, Ms. Smith, roll call, please.
Yolanda Clark,
Yolanda Clark, yes.
Maxine Drew,
Maxine Drew, yes.
Janie Humphries,
Janie Humphries, yes.
Wanda Brownlee Page,
Wanda Brownlee Page, yes.
Dr. Nguyen,
Dr. Nguyen, yes.
Dr. Yeager.
Dr. Yeager, yes.
Thank you.
Motion passes. Thank you.
Yes, it went to go get it.
Mr. Lopez.
All right, thank you. Next on our agenda, is a recommendation and a request from the board for potential action tonight. We've had a couple of candidates who have requested to participate in the 2021 KASB conference, which will happen in November. There is a stipulation within KASB that candidates who are up for election can register as long as they're sponsored by the school district that they are a candidate for. And if they are not elected onto the school board, then their registration will be canceled. But they are required to have sponsorship and their registration paid for by the school district of which they are seeking election for. So that request I thought I would bring to the board to see if that is something that the board would allow. And we would offer it, if the board approves this, we would offer it to all of the candidates who are running for the school board.
I'll make a motion to approve.
So move. Second.
There's a motion and a second. I'll open for questions or discussion. Dr. Nguyen?
The explainer says 3. If you say all, then it would be 5.
It should be, well, I think the 3 are the 3 who were not currently on the school board. But it would be, it's open to all current board members. And then we would also offer it to the 3 who are not. So I think that's what the intent of this is, to be able to offer it to the 3 who are not currently sitting board members. But as you all know, KASB conference is open to all current board members as well.
Oh. Have they been notified?
No, I had a request, and I told them that I needed to bring this to the board first. And as soon as if the board is agreeable, then we would offer it and extend it to all of the candidates. Any other questions or discussion? If not, Ms. Smith, roll call, please.
Yolanda Clark,
Yolanda Clark, yes.
Maxine Drew,
Maxine Drew, yes.
Janie Humphries,
Janie Humphries, yes.
Randy Lopez,
Randy Lopez, yes.
Wanda Brownlee Page,
Wanda Brownlee Page, yes.
Dr. Nguyen,
Dr. Nguyen, yes.
Dr. Yeager.
Dr. Yeager, yes.
Thank you.
Motion carries. Thank you. And that is just a good reminder for any current board members who would like to register. If you have not already let Ms. Smith know, you can do so, and she can get you registered for the conference. Thank you. Before we go on, we will take a quick 7-minute recess and before we continue with our agenda. Thank you. All right, we are, excuse me. Okay, welcome back, everybody. Thank you for letting us take a quick recess. We will continue with our agenda tonight. Next up on our agenda, board discussion, board report. So the first one is we have had a request, a few requests for us to consider school name changes. And per policy FC, we wanted to bring this to the board. The first step would be for the board to determine whether we want to consider the requests that have been brought forward. If so, then we would then determine a committee for us to review that. If the board decides not to take on these requests, then no further action would be necessary. But we have had several requests dating back to several months. So just wanted to bring this to the board for your consideration and discussion.
So what is the official policy? If we want to consider name changes, do we appoint a committee?
Yes, so per policy FC, so if you wanted to look that up, policy FC, renaming of facilities, whenever there's a request to rename existing property, we would determine first whether we want to consider the request. If we do, then the board president shall appoint a committee to review the request and to make recommendations to the board. Then there's a process for that committee to follow and bring back information to the board.
So if we wanted to appoint to form a committee, we'd need a motion?
Correct. I would need to know, we as a board would need to decide if we want to consider any of those requests.
And there would be one or two board members on the committee, is that correct?
Yes, and we can take that up at our meeting on the 29th, I think tonight, really just getting direction on whether we want to consider these requests. I would, I'm sorry, go ahead, Janie, and then Dr. Yeager.
I think with everything that has been going on in society, that it would be good to have a committee to consider any requests and to bring that back to the board.
Is that a motion?
It's a motion.
Thank you.
So, second.
There's a motion and a second. Dr. Yeager, I know you had a comment.
Will we get the list? I know there was a list that the community members sent a while ago, but will we get an updated list, or would you send that out to us again?
Yes, I can definitely send that information out to the full board so you have it. There were a few schools who were mentioned previously where folks wanted us to look into that. Ms. Page?
You only listed here name changes, but there was one request to change the, I think at Arrowhead School, the mascot, if I'm not mistaken. I didn't know if we were going to do both, or you just bringing up one now and then one at another time?
No, thank you, Ms. Page. I would ask for a friendly amendment to your motion, Ms. Humphries and Ms. Clark, to include mascots as well.
Yes, mascots and name and school name changes.
Okay. Thank you. Other questions, or just thank you, Ms. Page. Dr. Nguyen?
So the motion said to create a committee to review each separately. What is, help me understand the motion again.
So the motion would be per policy FC to create a committee to review the requests and make recommendations to the board.
Each separately.
I don't think the motion clarified whether it was separately or jointly, but it's
What
what the
we,
board wants to do.
yeah, what we could do is, I mean, there's a couple of options, I think, and we could discuss this on the 29th for further clarification once we create the committee, but we could create one committee that would then look at each of the schools, or, I mean, I could create several committees that would look at the schools, but
One
I
committee
think one committee
to look at
could,
any changes that have been requested.
So it'd be the name change committee.
Yeah.
Got it.
yes, and mascot, yes.
Facility and mascot changing.
Ms. Page?
No, I was just thinking when they changed the name of Carl B. Bruce, that was a special committee for that school. That can be, that's a heck of a thing to take on, for just one committee, that you would almost, and I'm just throwing this out, you almost need a committee that needs to be set up at each school, because it takes some work. Because you got to, I know what we did at Argentine when it came up, and it was intensified more than what some people had anticipated, and it got brutal. So you almost need to make sure the people who live in that area, who who are stakeholders, who were their past students, former students, teachers, community people at that school, and somebody to really do the history. How did that school get that name? And to be sure about it. Because I checked on some things and it wasn't what somebody had told me. So you really need somebody who's going to do the history piece.
Right.
But I almost think one committee can assign and get people to set it up. But to me, at each school, whoever it is, they need to be working on that.
Thank you, Ms. Page, and I completely agree. I think this is something that we definitely want to be very intentional and thoughtful on how we approach renaming of schools or mascots or whatever that looks like. I think it's important, and we want to take our time and do our due diligence there. There is an outline process within Policy FC that includes community input and factors to be considered, as well as other things that we should discuss, but I completely agree. I mean, really going into the community that school is in and getting input from community is definitely needed. So yes, I agree with you, and that's something that the committee can determine. I think they will, whoever's part of this committee would then help us determine what that process looks like, doing some of the history, like you mentioned, of understanding why certain places were named the way they were, but definitely want to be thoughtful on that.
You have a hand.
Ms. Clark or Ms. Drew?
Well, you've already said what I was going to say. I think we need to start with laying the groundwork first, putting together a committee, and as you said, then later on breaking up into individual committees relating to the school changes that we decide that we're going to do. So you've said everything I would in agreement with. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Drew. Ms. Clark, did you have something?
No, I was.
Okay. Oh, thank you.
That was what I was going to say too, that there's nothing to keep the committee, the larger committee, from having subcommittee per school.
Right.
But they all need to have the same process lined up so that everything gets treated fairly.
Okay, thank you. There's been an amended motion and a second. I will ask for Ms. Smith to do a roll call vote.
Yolanda Clark,
Yolanda Clark, yes.
Maxine Drew,
Maxine Drew, yes.
Janie Humphries,
Janie Humphries, yes.
Randy Lopez,
Randy Lopez, yes?
Wanda Brownlee Page,
Wanda Brownlee Page, yes.
Dr. Nguyen,
Dr. Nguyen, yes.
Dr. Yeager.
Dr. Yeager, yes.
Thank you.
Motion carries. Thank you. Board, if you are interested in serving on the committees that's going to consider this, please email me, or let Ms. Smith know, I'm sorry. Please email Ms. Smith, let her know you have an interest, and on the 29th, we'll discuss and appoint a committee. But I definitely, if you're interested, I do want to know that. Thank you. Next on our agenda, our board policy discussion, and we have Mr. Goheen here to walk us through. It has been a while since we have reviewed and discussed policy, and that is one of our major functions as a board. So we need to get back on track, and I know KASB does provide recommended policy updates, and Mr. Goheen is here to talk us through some of that. Mr. Goheen.
Sure, and I promise I'm not going to go through each of the policy recommendations. I have provided the materials to the board in terms of what the KSB recommendations are. I do want to highlight those a little bit and then walk through the process that the board has used to sort of outline how we're going to move forward on this. As those of you who've been on the board for a while know, KSB, we adopt or follow in large part KSB's modified or model policies. We have modified those in several places to account for how this district practices or what is appropriate for this district over time. But each year, twice a year, KSB provides updated model policies. They do that in January, and then they do that again in June. And this is the June updated policies. There are, I believe, 8 of them, 9 of them that they've made recommendations to. I've outlined what those are. I'm going to walk through those real quickly, but The explanation you get from KSB as part of the packet that I've given you does explain why they're making policy recommendations. The way we've handled the process is that my office gets a copy of those updated policies, reviews those compared to the policies the school district currently has in effect, to make sure that any of the changes at KSB fit within the modifications that you guys have adopted. And then I've given you my sort of recommendations, one way or the other, on whether you should make the modifications or not. In addition to the KSB policies, there are two other policies that I am recommending that you make changes to based upon my experience with a different school district, and that is policy EBBD and EBBF. Those are crisis management policies relating to crisis plans that we modified slightly last year to deal with the COVID crisis. The two policies don't line up very well, and that's what the proposed changes do, is they fix the policies in terms of their inconsistencies. So that's the reason for that. I'm happy to go over those in greater detail. The thought process is that we'll do sort of a first walkthrough tonight, have more discussion at the next board meeting as it relates to these specific policies and changes. Additionally, tonight, I want to remind the board if there are other policies that the board would like us to look at to make proposed recommendations to review. I've heard a couple already tonight. One was the policy relating to local purchases. I think that previously we had made a suggestion that the wellness policy might need to be reviewed. And so there are other policies. I know Dr. Nguyen has mentioned an encumbered balance policy that at least one of their school districts has looked at and adopted according to some guidance from the legislature. And so if there are other policies that the board wants us to take a look at, let us know. We can, if it's consensus from the board that those are policies we want recommended changes to, we can bring those to the board, have those presented, and then you guys can walk through the process of reviewing those policies and making changes to them as well. Just as a quick walkthrough on the policies that KSB has made recommended changes to, and to kind of let you know how this works. The first one is policy DC, which is just the annual operating policy. The change that KSB has made are in two spots. One is to remove the hard deadlines for presentation of recommendations on the budget to the board and replace those with a soft deadline that just says they'll be made by the statutory dates. Our policy differs slightly from KSB's policy in one respect, that is, instead of the superintendent reviewing the accounting system with the board, your actual policy requires regular fiscal updates from the superintendent to be reported to the board. You guys also have hard deadlines in for when the draft budget is to be presented to the board, and also a draft of the preliminary budget documents to the state being presented to the board. So that's, you can kind of see where the red line is in the policy change proposed by KSB. And then you have to take a look at our actual policy, which is on board docs, to see what the differences or variations are. I don't really have a strong recommendation one way or the other on the change to DC. I do think it makes some sense to have a little bit of room to maneuver, because you do have some changes from the legislative enactments in the last year, which allow for some different designations of tax revenue rates at earlier dates than what would meet the deadline currently under the board policy. But that's something to take a look at and kind of walk through. Dr. Nguyen?
Senate Bill 13 is correct. What is the House bill number? It can't be 21004.
I thought that's what it was. Hold on a second. Yeah, it says House Bill 2104.
Okay, so you've got an extra zero in there.
I do. So that's a typographical error by me on that. So in any event, take a look at those. You can kind of see why they made the change. Look at some of the next ones. The policy EE, our policy on this is quite a bit different. This is food services management. However, the change being proposed by KSB is to allow for availability of meals for remote learning. Obviously, remote learning is no longer permitted, but given circumstances that could change because of the COVID situation as it continues to unfold, I think it does make sense to make that modification to that policy, which would allow for the delivery of remote meals in the case of the shutdown of the school district. So it's sort of an emergency type of a addition or change to the policy. There are policy changes to the sex harassment policy and the race discrimination policy that pertain to students and to staff. And those are policies GAAC, GAACA, JGEC, and JGECA. Our policies are set up a little bit differently than KSB on this. Recall a couple of years ago when Title IX got changed, we modified our policy KN and we added a policy AH to try to address those changes on a more global plan. So although the KSB changes, some of the changes still would apply to the sex discrimination, the race discrimination policies. And if you look at policy GAAC, the first three paragraphs of that policy, you can see what they're doing. They're eliminating some of the excess language and making it so that acts of discrimination are just strictly prohibited without any qualifiers related to that. I think that policy change is acceptable if that's something you guys want to do. However, the other changes I would not recommend making because they would modify your process for dealing with complaints of discrimination, which are pretty carefully lined out in KN to address the Title IX complaints and the requirements of the regulations. And so I don't think you should make the other policy changes recommended there. One policy you can see just as another example, policy GAF, which is student-staff relations. ASB is recommending eliminating a sentence that appears in your policy which says staff members shall not submit students to bullying, harassment, or discrimination prohibited by board policy. I think that should stay in your board policy, so I would not recommend making that change. I understand they think it's duplicative, but it's a policy change that I do not think you should make. The next one is a policy IDAA, which just deals with special programs. The only change they're recommending is to make a reference to another policy in the heading of this policy. I think that's fine. I don't see any issue with that. And then the last, well, that's the end of the policies that they have, and I've talked briefly about the policy EBBD. Basically, what was going on with, or the problem with the evacuation emergency policies, or the primary one, is that you do have crisis plans that are developed to address things like a school shooter, for example. And the policy as currently drafted requires all of your plans to be public. And obviously you don't want policies dealing with crisis of sort of an active intruder or something like that to be publicly disseminated to the as part of the process. So that's the biggest change that we have in there. The other things are to make it aligned so that the two policies work together as opposed to having differentiation between the two. Those are the recommendations from KSB, the two recommended policy changes from our office, which I'm happy to answer any questions about. I think the game plan would be that we would have these as essentially a first read to look at tonight, and then at the next meeting, be prepared to address any questions or concerns, make additional modifications or changes to these policies as the board may see fit to do, and have a more in-depth discussion regarding them. Additionally, as I indicated, if there are other policies that you would like us to take a look at between now and the next meeting, or at any time, if the board would let us know that, we'd be happy to pull those policies out and be able to discuss those in the context of this policy review, and understand that we will be getting additional policy recommendations from KSB sometime in January for the next round of this. So that's kind of the presentation for tonight, but I'm happy to answer any questions, or if there are other suggestions on policies you'd like us to look at, let us know.
Any questions for Mr. Goheen? And please feel free, if you think of other policies you'd like to review, please let Mr. Goheen know. what those are. Thank you. Okay, so we'll continue with our agenda. Next up, our executive sessions. Dr. Stubblefield, if you'd like to dismiss staff.
And staff, you're free to go because the executive sessions don't involve anyone that is present. So thank you.
Thank you, staff. And have a great night. So would entertain a motion to recess to executive session to discuss the board clerk evaluation pursuant to non-elected personnel exception to COMA for 10 minutes, going in at 7:30.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Ms. Smith?
Yolanda Clark,
Yolanda Clark, yes.
Maxine Drew,
Maxine Drew, yes.
Janie Humphries,
Janie Humphries, yes.
Randy Lopez,
Randy, yes.
Wanda Brownlee Page,
Wanda Brownlee Page, yes.
Dr. Nguyen,
Dr. Nguyen, yes.
Dr. Yeager.
Dr. Yeager, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Entertain a motion to come back into open session.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Ms. Smith?
Yolanda Clark,
Yolanda Clark, yes?
Maxine Drew,
Maxine Drew, yes.
Janie Humphries,
Janie Humphries, yes.
Randy Lopez,
Randy, yes?
Wanda Brownlee Page, Dr. Nguyen, Dr. Yeager.
All right, back in open session. We'll now entertain a motion to recess to executive session to discuss matters of non-elected personnel in order to protect the privacy interests of the parties involved under coma for 10 minutes, going in now. Can't see the clock.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Ms. Smith?
Yolanda Clark,
Yolanda Clark, yes?
Maxine Drew,
Maxine Drew, yes.
Janie Humphries,
Janie Humphries, yes.
Randy Lopez,
Randy, yes.
Wanda Brownlee Page, Dr. Nguyen, Dr. Yeager.
Thank you. come back into open session?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Ms. Smith?
Yolanda Clark,
Yolanda Clark, yes.
Maxine Drew, Janie Humphries,
Yes.
Randy Lopez,
Randy, yes.
Wanda Brownlee Page,
Wanda Brownlee Page, yes.
Dr. Nguyen, Dr. Yeager.
All right, we are back in open session. Would now entertain motion to go into our third executive session to recess for consultation with the attorney on matters which would be deemed privileged in the attorney-client relationship under the Kansas Open Meetings Act for 25 minutes going in at 8 o'clock.
Moved, second.
Moved and seconded.
Yeah, moved and seconded.
Moved by Ms. Clark, seconded by Ms. Humphries. Ms. Smith?
Thank you, Yolanda Clark,
Yolanda Clark, yes.
Maxine Drew, Janie Humphries, Randy Lopez,
Yes.
Randy, yes.
Wanda Brownlee Page.
Wanda Brownlee Page, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I couldn't pick up if that was a
Motion to come back into open session.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Thank you. Ms. Smith?
Yolanda Clark,
Yolanda Clark, yes.
Maxine Drew,
Maxine Drew, yes.
Janie Humphries,
Janie Humphries, yes.
Randy Lopez,
Randy Lopez, yes.
Wanda Brownlee Page, Dr. Nguyen, Dr. Yeager. Thank you.
All right, we're back in open session. Would now entertain a motion to recess to executive session to discuss the superintendent evaluation pursuant to non-elected personnel exception Tacoma going in at 8:30 for 15 minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Ms. Smith?
Yolanda Clark,
Yolanda Clark, yes.
Maxine Drew,
Maxine Drew, yes.
Janie Humphries,
Janie, yes.
Randy Lopez,
Randy, yes.
Wanda Brownlee Page, Dr. Nguyen, and Dr. Yeager. Thank you.
Thank you.
He is the same thing, Dr. Stubblefield.
Proud of you.
Motion to come back into open session, please.
So moved.
Second,
Moved and seconded. Ms. Smith?
Yolanda Clark,
Yolanda Clark, yes.
Maxine Drew,
Maxine Drew, yes.
Janie Humphries,
Yes.
Randy Lopez,
Randy, yes.
Wanda Brownlee Page,
Wanda Brownlee Page, yes.
Dr. Nguyen, Dr. Yeager.
Dr. Yeager, yes.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. We're back in open session. Again, board, thank you for your work tonight. Dr. Stubblefield and staff, thank you so much for being with us. Reminder, please let Ms. Smith know about the November date for the board workshop. If you could do that by the end of the day tomorrow, that would be great if you haven't done so already. Other than that,
Yeah, you're going to send out items for the 29th meeting?
yes, I will send out an email tonight or tomorrow and ask for your feedback on items for the meeting on October 29th. Correct. All right. Thank you, everybody. This meeting is adjourned.
Okay.